Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day.
Today we're going to be taking on Brene Brown's Rising Strong.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a book all about turning those face down in the arena moments into, well, something a lot more empowering.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Brown really doesn't shy away from any of the messy stuff.
Right.
She actually argues that the key to rising strong is kind of leaning into vulnerability and discomfort.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but I'm also a little terrified.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is not exactly known for being comfortable.
Right.
It's more of a heart-racing, sweaty palms kind of experience.
Right. That's one way to put it, I guess. But Brown's research suggests that vulnerability is also like the birthplace of joy.
Okay.
Belonging, creativity,
Oh,
all that good stuff we crave as humans.
So it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah.
We have to risk discomfort to experience the good stuff.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, she shares a personal story about a vacation gone wrong.
Oh, no.
Which she calls the Lake Travis experience. It's this seemingly idyllic trip with her husband that quickly spirals into a conflict.
I can relate to those vacation blow-ups.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the stress you're trying to escape suddenly surfaces in the middle of paradise.
Exactly.
So does Brown's story give any clues on how to navigate those moments?
It actually becomes kind of a blueprint for her entire rising strong process.
Okay.
Which she breaks down into 3 acts.
Right.
The reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution.
It's got a classic storytelling arc to it, doesn't it?
It totally does, yeah.
Speaking of stories, didn't Brown get some inspiration for this book from the folks at Pixar?
Yes, you're remembering correctly. She visited the animation studio and realized that they place a huge emphasis on what they call day 2.
Okay.
That messy middle part of the creative process where most of the magic happens.
Yeah.
Brown saw a parallel there to our personal struggles.
Interesting.
We often want to skip over the hard parts.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's where the real growth lies.
No pain, no gain, right?
Yeah.
So let's dive into those stages.
Okay.
What's the reckoning all about?
The reckoning is that moment you realize you're emotionally hooked by a situation.
Oh.
Your buttons are pushed.
Yeah.
You might feel defensive or angry. And you're tempted to either shut down or lash out.
Yeah, it's like that fight, flight, or freeze response kicking in.
Right. Yeah.
But in like a board meeting or a family dinner?
Exactly.
So what are we supposed to do instead of exploding like a chandelier?
Right.
Which is how Brown describes those emotional outbursts.
Right. Avoiding those chandelier moments is key.
Oh, hey?
The reckoning is about recognizing those emotions.
Okay.
Getting curious about what's triggering them. And choosing a different path.
This makes me think about Brown's personal story about how her family handled emotions.
Right.
They were more of the sweep it under the rug type, weren't they?
Yes, until her mom started going to therapy.
Okay.
Which was a real turning point for the whole family. It made Brown realize how important it is to acknowledge and process our emotions instead of suppressing them.
Okay, so we've had our reckoning. We're aware of our feelings.
Yeah.
What happens next in this rising strong arena?
Next comes the rumble.
Okay.
Which Brown describes as the most challenging part of the process.
Oh, fun.
This is where we dig into our stories about what happened and why we have to get honest with ourselves, even if it's uncomfortable.
And this is where the shitty first draft comes in. Right? I've heard Brown talk about this before, but honestly, I'm still not quite sure what it is.
Right.
Is it like a super honest journal entry?
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah. It's about getting all your raw thoughts and feelings out on paper without censoring yourself.
Okay.
Think of it as a stream of consciousness where you allow yourself to be completely unfiltered.
So no grammar police allowed in the SFD.
Exactly.
What's the point of getting all that raw emotion out there?
It's about uncovering those hidden biases. Those conspiracy theories we tell ourselves, that might be fueling our reactions. We might discover that we're making assumptions.
Right.
Exaggerating the situation. Or even blaming ourselves unfairly.
I'm starting to see how this could be helpful, but also a little scary.
Yeah.
What if I uncover some things I don't want to see?
Right.
What if my SFD reveals that I'm not as good as I thought I was?
That's a valid concern. It takes courage to face those shadow parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
But Brown argues that it's essential to acknowledge them if we want to grow and move forward.
Okay.
She actually provides an example of using the SFD to analyze a conflict with a colleague.
Uh-huh.
And it completely changed her understanding of the situation.
Okay, you've convinced me I'm ready to rumble.
All right.
What are some of the other things Brown suggests we should be paying attention to during this stage?
Well, she explores several concepts that can be helpful to kind of rumble with.
Okay.
One that's particularly relevant is this idea of sewer rats and scofflaws.
Okay, now you're just messing with me, right?
I know, right?
Those are some interesting character names.
But they point to a very real human tendency,
Okay.
categorizing people as either good or bad,
Right.
especially when we're hurt or angry.
Ah, so it's about that tendency to see the world in black and white.
Yeah.
After a conflict, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
So how do we move beyond those simplistic judgments?
That's where boundaries, integrity, and generosity come in.
All right.
Brown uses the acronym Living Big to describe this concept.
Gotcha.
Now imagine you're dealing with a colleague who constantly misses deadlines.
Ugh, I've been there. It's so frustrating.
It is. And living big encourages you to set clear boundaries, stating your needs and expectations while assuming the best in that person.
Okay.
Maybe they're struggling with something you're not aware of.
Right.
It's about finding a balance between honoring yourself and extending grace to others.
Okay. So it's not about being a pushover.
Right.
But it's also not about attacking or blaming the other person.
Exactly.
It's about finding that middle ground where you can be both assertive and compassionate.
Exactly. It's tricky, but it's a skill we can develop with practice.
Yeah.
Brown offers some helpful strategies in the book for navigating those tricky interpersonal situations.
Sewer rats and scofflaws. Living big.
Yeah.
These concepts are giving me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
What other rumble-worthy topics does Brown cover?
She delves into some heavy but essential themes like heartbreak and forgiveness.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the courage it takes to love and the complexity of letting go.
Forgiveness is such a loaded word.
It is.
What does Brown say about actually putting it into practice? It can feel impossible sometimes.
She makes a really important distinction.
Okay.
It's not about condoning hurtful actions.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the pain, allowing ourselves to grieve the loss,
Okay.
and then making a conscious choice to move forward
Right.
without being consumed by resentment.
That makes sense. It's about freeing ourselves from the burden of anger and bitterness.
Yeah.
And I imagine grief plays a significant role in this process.
Absolutely. Brown highlights the core elements of grief. Loss, longing, and feeling loss.
Yeah.
And she stresses that allowing ourselves to fully experience those feelings is crucial to healing and moving forward.
So we have to create space for those difficult emotions.
Right.
Instead of pushing them away.
Exactly. She also talks about composting failure.
Okay.
This idea that we can actually learn and grow from our mistakes.
So instead of seeing failure as something to be ashamed of,
Yeah.
we could view it as fertilizer for future growth.
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that? It's easier said than done.
Think about a time you messed up.
Okay.
Now, instead of dwelling on the negative, ask yourself, what did I learn from this?
Okay.
How can this experience make me better? It's a conscious shift in perspective.
Right.
From shame to growth. And Brown shares a personal story about how she composted a major failure and turned it into a valuable learning experience.
Okay. We've reckoned with our emotions, we've rumbled with some difficult truths, and we're starting to see the value in our failures.
Yeah.
What's the final act in this rising strong journey?
That's the revelation, where we get to write a new ending to our story.
Okay.
Based on what we learned in the rumble. It's not about erasing the past,
Gotcha.
but integrating it into a braver and more authentic narrative.
So we're not pretending those hard things didn't happen.
Right.
We're reclaiming our stories and rewriting them in a way that empowers us to move forward.
You got it. And Brown provides a powerful example of how she rewrote a story from her own past.
Okay.
And it transformed how she lived and led.
Awesome.
We'll dive deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm hooked. I can't wait to hear more about how we can all become revolutionaries of our own stories.
It's going to be good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Rising Strong.
It's great to be back.
Last time we left off talking about the power of rewriting our stories.
Right.
It's the final act of the Rising Strong process, what Brown calls the revolution.
Yeah.
And honestly, it sounds both liberating and a little daunting.
It definitely requires courage to confront those old narratives and choose a new path.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the revolution, I think it's important to emphasize something Brown highlights throughout the book. We don't have to go through this alone.
That's such a crucial point. I'll admit I can be fiercely independent, the kind of person who would rather struggle in silence than ask for help.
Yeah.
But Brown seems to be suggesting that maybe that's not the most resilient approach.
You're picking up on something really important there.
Yeah.
Brown's research actually found that people who are most willing to ask for help are often the best at giving it. They see support as a two-way street,
Okay.
a natural part of the human experience.
It's like they've normalized the idea of needing help, so they're more comfortable both giving and receiving it.
Right.
Whereas someone like me, I've often viewed asking for help as a sign of weakness.
That's a common misconception, but it's one that can keep us stuck in isolation.
Right.
Brown even suggests that modeling asking for help can actually make it easier for others to do the same.
So by being open about our own struggles,
Yeah.
we're creating a more supportive and vulnerable environment for everyone around us.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture where it's okay to not have all the answers,
Right.
to reach out for a hand when you're feeling lost.
Now, shifting gears a bit, remember our conversation about the rumble and those hidden biases
Yes.
or conspiracy theories, as Brown calls them.
Of course, that's where those shitty first drafts really come in handy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how those raw, unfiltered thoughts can reveal so much about our underlying beliefs and assumptions.
It's like holding up a mirror to our inner world, even the parts we'd rather not see. And one of the most common and potentially damaging conspiracy theories Brown addresses is this idea that we're not lovable.
Oof. That's a tough one.
It is.
I think most of us at some point have wrestled with that feeling of not being worthy of love and belonging.
It's a universal struggle. Brown's research found that people who have experienced heartbreak, betrayal, or difficult family relationships
Right.
often carry this belief deep within them.
It makes sense if those closest to us couldn't or wouldn't love us.
Right.
It's easy to internalize that message and start believing we're fundamentally flawed.
Exactly. But Brown stresses that just because someone wasn't able to love us in the way we needed doesn't mean we're unlovable. Our worthiness isn't contingent on someone else's capacity for love.
It's so important to remember that it's easy to get caught in that cycle of self-blame and doubt,
Right.
especially after a painful experience.
And that's why the rumble is so crucial.
Okay.
It's about challenging those deeply ingrained stories.
Yeah.
Excavating the truth beneath the surface.
Okay.
And recognizing that our worthiness is inherent, not something we have to earn.
This makes me think about those moments when we find ourselves face down in the arena.
Right.
Those times when we feel like we've failed or disappointed others.
Yeah.
It's easy to spiral into shame and self-criticism.
Brene actually has a lot to say about how we handle failure. She talks about the importance of composting failure.
Yeah.
The idea that we can learn and grow from our mistakes.
I love that analogy. It's about transforming those painful experiences into something fertile and life-giving.
Exactly. And one of the most important things we can do when we're facing failure is to be kind to ourselves.
Easier said than done, right?
It is.
Our default setting is often to beat ourselves up when we mess up.
It's true. We're often much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend or a loved one.
Right.
Brown encourages us to talk to ourselves the way we would talk to someone we care about.
Okay.
Imagine a friend comes to you heartbroken over a mistake they made.
Yeah.
Would you berate them or offer compassion and support?
Of course I would offer support.
Right.
Why is it so much harder to extend that same kindness to ourselves?
It's a practice, and it takes conscious effort to challenge those negative self-talk patterns. Brown also emphasizes the importance of reaching out to someone we trust, someone who can offer empathy and understanding without judgment.
Again, this circles back to the power of connection
Yes.
and having those trusted few in our corner.
Absolutely. And Brown is very transparent about her own experiences with seeking support.
Yeah.
She talks about relying on her husband, her therapist, her close friends to help her navigate those tough rumble moments.
That's incredibly refreshing to hear, especially from someone who's seen as an expert in vulnerability and resilience.
Right.
It reminds us that we're all human, we all struggle, and we all need support.
Now let's talk about trust.
Okay.
It's a theme that weaves throughout Rising Strong.
Uh-huh.
Brown highlights how trust is often the first casualty in a fall.
Right.
Whether it's trust in ourselves, trust in others, or trust in the world around us.
Okay.
It can take a serious hit when things go wrong.
And rebuilding trust can feel like an uphill battle. It's not something that happens overnight, especially if we've been deeply hurt or betrayed.
You're right. It's a process that requires time, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable again. And to help us navigate that process, Brown offers a really helpful framework for thinking about trust.
Okay.
She calls it the braving acronym.
Oh, yes. I've heard her talk about braving.
Yes.
It's a powerful tool,
Hmm?
but to be honest, I can never remember what all the letters stand for.
Okay.
Can you refresh my memory?
Of course, braving stands for boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault integrity, non-judgment, and generosity.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
What does each of those elements mean in terms of building trust?
Boundaries is about setting clear limits and expectations,
Okay.
respecting each other's space and needs.
Uh-huh.
Reliability means doing what you say you'll do, being someone others can count on.
That makes sense. And accountability is about owning up to our mistakes,
Yes.
making amends when we've hurt someone, and taking responsibility for our actions.
Exactly. It's about being someone who can be trusted to do the right thing, even when it's hard.
Right?
Vault is about confidentiality and keeping secrets.
Okay.
It's knowing you can confide in someone without fearing they'll betray your trust.
Confidentiality is essential in any relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Integrity is about living in alignment with your values and doing the right thing even when no one is watching.
Okay.
Non-judgment means offering support and understanding without criticizing or shaming.
Those are qualities I look for in any close relationship.
Yeah.
And finally, what about generosity?
Generosity is about assuming the best in others, extending grace and compassion, and believing that people are doing the best they can with what they have.
Wow, that braving acronym is like a blueprint for building and maintaining healthy relationships. It's about showing up with your whole heart being vulnerable and creating a space for authentic connection.
You got it, and it's a reminder that trust isn't something that's given, it's earned
Right.
through consistent actions and behaviors that demonstrate these qualities.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground, from the power of asking for help
Yeah.
to the importance of self-compassion and the braving acronym for building trust. I'm eager to hear more about the revolution and how we can start rewriting those limiting narratives.
I'm excited to dive into that with you in the final part of our deep dive. I'm so glad you're still with us.
My brain is definitely full after all that rumbling,
Hey,
but in a good way.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
Brown's work isn't about easy answers or quick fixes.
Right.
It's about challenging us to dig deep and confront those uncomfortable truths that are often holding us back.
And one of the most intriguing concepts we haven't explored fully yet is this idea of rewriting our stories,
Right.
which is at the heart of the revolution.
You're right. We've talked about recognizing our emotions, rumbling with our stories,
Right.
owning our imperfections.
Right.
But how do we actually move forward and craft a new narrative?
Right.
How do we turn those face down in the arena moments into something empowering?
Okay, yes, that's the part I'm really curious about.
Okay.
Give me the tools.
Well, Brown emphasizes that the revolution isn't about erasing the past
Okay.
or pretending those difficult experiences didn't happen. It's about integrating them
Okay.
into a braver,
Uh-huh.
more wholehearted story of who we are.
So it's less about denial and more about reframing.
Exactly. It's about taking those messy pieces, those face-down moments,
Okay.
and using them to create something new and empowering.
It's almost like alchemy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Turning those painful experiences into something beautiful and valuable.
I love that analogy. And Brown illustrates this beautifully with a story from her own life.
Okay.
She talks about a time when she was publicly criticized
Oh.
and ridiculed for her work.
Oh, wow.
It was a devastating experience
Well.
that left her feeling deeply ashamed and questioning her worth.
Ouch, that sounds brutal.
It was rough.
I think anyone who's ever put themselves out there,
Yeah.
whether it's creatively or professionally, can relate to that fear of public humiliation.
It's one of the most primal human fears.
Right.
But instead of letting that shame consume her,
Yeah.
Brown decided to rumble with it.
Okay.
She dug deep into her story, challenged her assumptions,
Okay.
and ultimately rewrote the ending.
So what did that rewriting process look like for her?
Okay.
Walk me through it.
First, she acknowledged the pain and hurt she felt.
Okay.
She didn't try to minimize it or pretend it didn't matter.
Right.
She allowed herself to fully experience those raw emotions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, what we resist persists. If we try to push away our feelings, they only come back stronger.
Right. And once she allowed herself to feel those feelings, she
Yeah.
started asking herself some tough questions.
Okay.
What story was she making up about the situation?
Right.
What were her hidden biases and expectations?
Uh-huh.
What did she need to learn and understand about herself?
Those are the same questions we explored in the Rumble.
Yes.
It's like we're applying those same principles of self-awareness and honesty to the specific event.
Exactly. And through that process of deep self-reflection, Brown had a powerful realization.
What's that?
The criticism wasn't actually about her or her work.
Okay.
It was a reflection of the critic's own insecurities and fears.
Wow, that's a game changer.
It is.
It takes the sting out of it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And once Brown shifted her perspective,
Ah.
she was able to release the shame and rewrite the ending of her story.
Okay.
Instead of seeing herself as a victim, she saw herself as a courageous woman who was daring to put her work out into the world,
Yeah.
even in the face of criticism.
That's incredibly inspiring.
It is.
It shows that we have the power to choose how we interpret those difficult experiences.
Right.
And how we let them shape our narratives.
Absolutely. And this isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery and transformation.
So we're constantly evolving and refining our narratives as we learn and grow.
Yes. And one of the key ingredients in this process is connection.
Okay.
Brown stresses the importance of having a trusted few people in our lives who we can turn to for support, encouragement, and accountability.
Those are the people who can help us see the bigger picture.
Right.
When we're caught up in our own heads, right?
They can offer a different perspective, challenge our assumptions,
Right.
and remind us of our strengths when we're doubting ourselves.
Yeah.
Brown is very open about her own reliance on her trusted few, her husband, her therapist, her close friends. She doesn't pretend to have it all figured out.
I think that's what makes her work so relatable and powerful.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even the most successful and accomplished people
Right.
need support and connection.
We're all in this together, navigating the messy, beautiful journey of being human.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
Good.
I'm walking away with a deeper understanding of vulnerability and a renewed commitment to embracing the rising strong process.
That's wonderful to hear. And for you listening, we encourage you to continue exploring Brene Brown's work.
Yes.
Rising Strong is filled with powerful stories and practical tools for navigating the challenges of life and emerging stronger on the other side.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Reach out to your trusted few.
Yeah.
Practice those rumble skills and keep writing those daring new endings to your story.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day. Stand tall, feel the love come your way. VIP every single day. Let's celebrate, it's your time to sway. Unlock your power, let your spirit take flight. I am worthy VIP, beaming light into the night. Feel the magic spark, it's a beautiful sight. Here to cheer you on, life shining a new light.